The first episode opens in Yosemite National Park, where two men are scaling a cliff when a woman's body suddenly plummets from the summit, crashing into the rope that connects them. The scene shifts to Kyle Turner, who is with his son in the forest, inspecting bloody tracks. They discuss how poachers ride horses and use arrows to kill animals without drawing attention. Kyle tells his son they can't catch the culprits now. Then, a call comes through his radio, and Kyle tells his son he has to head to work at the very cliff where the climbers were. The two climbers are being rescued by a team when Kyle arrives. The rangers on the scene talk about how quickly the weather can change up there. One of the rangers, Milch, introduces Kyle as Special Agent Turner of the Investigative Services Branch ISB. Kyle passes by the rangers as they describe the victim as a woman in her early 20s, possibly an accident or a jumper. Kyle asks how the climbers knew the victim, but Vasquez explains they didn't. She just fell. Kyle then asks the climbers if they heard voices or saw anyone above them, but they say no. Looking over the cliff, Kyle sees the woman's body hanging precariously. Vasquez explains that lightning in the area made rescue teams reluctant to retrieve her. Kyle gears up anyway, reasoning that birds, rain, or time could damage evidence, or the rope might give way by morning. Milch argues they should just let her fall since that was her plan anyway. Kyle rappels down to the body, takes photos with his phone, then puts on gloves to inspect her injuries. A bracelet slips off her wrist, tumbling down to the ground below. A radio call warns that lightning is getting closer, so Kyle and the woman's body are pulled back up. On top of the cliff, Milch suggests coyotes may have caused the damage to her leg. Kyle, however, notices black cottonwood clutched in her hand, a plant not found on the summit, meaning she'd been running from somewhere lower down. Vasquez notes she's barefoot, and Milch speculates she was on drugs. Kyle asks if anyone recognizes her, but Milch doesn't. Kyle searches the area and finds a bloody handprint on a rock and two bloody footprints leading further down. A storm rolls in, making his horse nervous, so they leave. The scene then cuts to the county coroner's office, where the woman's body is labeled Jane Doe. The doctor tells Kyle and Captain Suter that the injuries are mixed, making it hard to determine what happened before or after the fall. However, the injury on her leg definitely occurred beforehand, likely from a canine bite. They also note she has a gold, glittery cross tattoo on her wrist. Kyle says he thinks he's seen her before and observes her feet were damaged from walking in shoes too small for her. Since there were no animal tracks near the summit, the bite injuries must have happened long before she fell. Back at the ranger station, Suter asks Kyle to be nicer to the rangers and points out he smells like bourbon. Park Superintendent Lawrence joins them, asking for updates on the jump. Suter says they're waiting on test results, but Lawrence shows them that social media is already speculating about an animal attack, which could scare away visitors. Kyle bluntly tells him he doesn't work for the park. That night, Kyle returns to the base of the cliff where the woman fell and finds a bead with the letter A on it. Following more beads, he eventually discovers the bracelet that had fallen from her wrist, with beads spelling out the letters T, K, E, and A. Later, a woman is shown sleeping when her phone rings. It's Kyle. He asks if the kids are asleep and tells her about an upcoming meteor shower, the biggest of the year. He reminisces about how they used to snuggle under a blanket together to watch it. She asks if he's been drinking. He says he was just thinking about old times and wanted to let her know in case they wanted to watch. She tells him to go to sleep. After she hangs up, a man in her bed, her husband, remarks that Kyle should have better boundaries for someone working in a national park. The next morning, Kyle sits on a dock drinking. Vasquez knocks on his door, saying she called but got no answer. She tells him Captain Suter is under pressure about the Jane Doe case. Kyle is annoyed. Vasquez says there's no match for the victim's fingerprints or missing person reports. Kyle asks about park employee records, but they haven't heard back yet. He tells her to push harder. She adds that they're checking gate video. Vasquez suggests checking campsites and entrances, but Kyle points out over 100,000 people come through the park each week. He saddles a horse for her despite her hesitation, and they ride to retrace Jane Doe's path to the summit. They reach an old hunting shack and find a bloody footprint outside. Inside, they find bloody rope. Vasquez speculates Jane Doe hid there, but Kyle wonders why she didn't stay. Vasquez suggests she was scared or injured. They notice fresh carvings on the walls, which Kyle photographed. Suddenly, Vasquez opens another door and comes face to face with a bear. Kyle fires his gun to scare it away. Continuing along the path, they see a bird pecking at bloodied ground near discarded shoes. Kyle says coyotes likely got to her. Vasquez bags the shoes as evidence. They find a puddle of blood. Then Kyle notices a ricochet mark on a nearby rock and a bullet lodged in a tree. He calls the doctor, who who re-examines the body and discovers a bullet wound in her leg. Kyle and Vasquez speculate that someone was chasing her or that she might have shot herself. When they return, a realtor's car is outside Kyle's house. It's his ex-wife, Jill. She notices his belongings are still boxed up. He asks if her husband sent her because of the late-night call. Jill says her husband Scott is understanding. Kyle tells her about the dead girl and the gold tattoo, then asks Jill how happy she is. She says she's as happy as she can be. Later, Jill is on the phone with Suter, telling him Kyle seems like he wants to tell her something but can't. She asks how his wife Mary, and Suter reveals their daughter Kate has relapsed and is in trouble, so their granddaughter Sadie is back with them. Jill says she'll see him at their wedding anniversary party. After hanging up, she asks her daughter to help bake a cake for her dad's birthday, but the girl says he doesn't like cake. Meanwhile, Kyle looks at the photo of the carvings from the shack. His son has drawn a picture of himself, his mom, and Kyle on horseback, saying it's how things used to be. Kyle notices the beads from the victim's bracelet have been rearranged to spell, "take hike." His son thinks his mom did it. Kyle then flips through an old photo album and finds a picture of Jill with a group of kids at a camp called Wildwood Nature Adventure. Kyle tells Vasquez about the camp photo and the bracelet, explaining that all employees and campers received similar ones between 2008 and 2011. He later drives up next to park ranger who's pushing his bike up a road. They chat like old friends. Stewart mentions he's going fishing and asks if Kyle wants to join, but Kyle says he's busy with the girl's death. Stewart says he heard she was just a tourist who fell. Meanwhile, Vasquez is looking through old Wildwood camp photos on their website when her son joins her. As they sit together, a message pops up on her screen. "You can't pretend he doesn't exist. He's your son too." Vasquez quickly shuts her laptop and locks the door. Kyle, meanwhile, studies the bullet casing and photos of the girl. His son interrupts, saying it's time to go outside and watch the stars. At Jill's house, she has dinner with her husband and daughters, then goes outside to watch the same meteor shower.